Chances are if you clicked on this video, you're looking to make your life a little bit more organized. Well, today I'm going to be sharing my tips for how I organize my life. It's easy to become overwhelmed when you start thinking about how to organize all the moving parts of your life. And it can sometimes be a struggle to figure out how to streamline everything going on. But luckily I have figured out a solid routine for making this process as clear as possible. And I have broken up this process into 5 parts, which I'll be sharing with you all today. Let's start with part 1, time management. Time is our most important non-renewable resource. We can always make more money in life, but we can never create more time for ourselves. So what is time management? Well, according to Oxford Languages, time management is defined as the ability to use one's time effectively and productively, especially at work. So the first step then, if we are thinking about using our time effectively, is figuring out where do we want to spend that time. I really like to use a Sunday afternoon before each week starts to get really clear on how I want to spend my time that week. And I first start with simple pen and paper. I love brain dumping. It saves me as someone who can feel really stressed, really overwhelmed with all the thoughts going on in my mind, to just throw it all down on paper. Doesn't matter if it's about work, life, fitness, how was my week the week before, doing little week reviews. I'll draw out even sometimes like a little graph on how my week went the week before, which areas did I feel good about, which days were highs, which days were lows, and really just reflect on how the week's been. This really helps me just come into the next week with a more clear mind on what I want to focus on and how to improve my week. I also find it helps if you have a lot of events coming up to just write down everything that you can remember that's potentially coming up all into a piece of paper, and then we'll get to scheduling it out later, but just to know that, hey, I'm not gonna forget anything. Everything that I was thinking of is now transferred to paper. I do really like using the quick ticks method, which is one that I read about from a book that Grace Beverly created. She is an entrepreneur who I believe used to be like a YouTuber as well, but I really enjoyed her method where she just talks about prioritizing different things. So how the quick ticks method works is you're gonna take just a piece of paper, break it up into 3 columns, and then you're gonna break it down into like, you know, your 5-minute tasks like quick ticks, the bigger tasks, and then projects. So yeah, your quick ticks are things that are gonna take less than 5 minutes, maybe responding to a quick email. Tasks are things that might take like 30 minutes or so. You know, you're wrapping up something that you have to send off to someone, you're entering an invoice, little things like that that aren't major projects. And then obviously projects are things that could take multiple tasks and quick ticks to complete. They're something that's not going to just be completed in a quick 30 minutes. And I really like this method because it makes you very much aware of the big projects going on. You don't lose sight of those, and you feel a bit more sane when you break it down into smaller workable pieces. And you can also start to prioritize, okay, like what can I manage in my day? What is the most important thing to prioritize? Sometimes I also like to go back through like a red pen and circle the things that I can do that day and just kind of figure out, okay, like what things can I be working on right now without forgetting the bigger picture and the bigger projects that are coming down the timeline. I especially find this whole process really crucial as a freelancer because, you know, I don't have a boss reminding me of when things are due. I'm sure students are feeling the same way, where you have to be on top of it by yourself and you have to be self-motivated to get things done. It can sometimes feel really overwhelming, so throwing everything out on pieces of paper and just being like, okay, I got it all down, what's next? That's just the first step to just feel a little bit more organized and a little bit more sane before we move on to the next step. So once I have dumped all this info out onto paper, next enters Notion. Now, for those of you who've watched my channel for quite some time, you know I'm a Notion girly. I use Notion for everything. Notion has my entire life plan in it for every single step, every single thing. Notion is the first thing I look at my desk every single morning when I start work, and it's the last thing I look at my desk when I'm wrapping up work for the day and checking off my last to-dos. It really helps to just manage different sections of your life. I do have a template. I'll link the video where I link the template. I give it away for free for you guys to download. You can literally use the exact same hub that I use for everything. I manage my fitness in there, my health goals, my reading goals, my everyday work to-dos, bigger pictures, people's contacts, things for work. So if you guys want to grab that, don't be shy, go check out that video link and you can use the same one as me. And now, super exciting, Notion connects to your Google Calendar through its own like Notion calendar app. Amazing. I'm so stoked. Like literally my whole life is in Notion completely now. I already liked using Google Calendar, so it was perfect. Now they just link across. I can open up the Notion calendar app. I haven't used all its features yet, but if I really get the hang of that, I'm gonna make a video on it for you guys as well, because now you can really like connect projects to things in your calendar, and it's just super seamless to switch from the Notion app to then just quickly open up Notion calendar to see everything. So that's why you'll see in this video, really my order of operations is to brain dump on paper, move things to Notion, which we're currently in that step right now, and then move on to Notion calendar. So let's first talk about, just putting things down into Notion. So first, because I do this every Sunday, I clear up all the items from the previous week. And then if there's things that weren't completed, what I love is that they're still there. I can just move them throughout the week, reschedule them out, and try to get them done this following week. I love the flexibility that Notion provides. Yes, I love pen and paper, but I love that I can move things around. I'm not crossing things out. And if I don't finish things, I can just shuffle it into the next week, which really takes a lot of pressure off in a lot of ways for me. So then I start looking at things like my quick ticks, my tasks, my projects, and start putting those into different days where I know I can complete those things, and just really also scheduling in some events. So for example, I have a podcast with a friend. We do that every single Tuesday. I always leave a section in my to-do list for that Tuesday. Hey, I'll be doing a podcast from this time to this time. If I have a video that I usually post on a Wednesday, I have kind of fallen off track with that lately, but usually it's on a Wednesday and a Sunday, I'll have that like bolded and be like, okay, you're gonna post that today, and things like that. I just, move those events throughout the calendar, and it really helps just keep me sane. So really, this is my key list for going through things throughout the week and making sure that everything's completed. I also love that in this little hub, if there's things that I need to keep in the back of my mind but aren't relevant to the week, I can kind of add it to the sidebar and be like, okay, we're going to revisit this at a later time. So if there's anything in your notes that you wrote down, like big projects that aren't really relevant for the upcoming week, just put them to the side if you really want to make sure you don't forget them. And it's an ease of mind to be like, okay, it's there, we'll get to it. I'm not going to forget that it exists. So now let's move on to part 3, which is time blocking. So I have like a love-hate relationship with time blocking. I've gone through phases where I use it a lot, phases where I don't use it much. And right now, I think we have a fairly healthy relationship. And what I mean by that is I don't time block as intensely as I had in the past, but it does provide a little bit of structure for me. And as I mentioned, as a freelancer, structure is really important for me. I'm sure it is for any students out there too, or anyone who's like, working for themselves. It's pretty crucial to make sure that you have some sort of structure throughout the day to stay on top of things. So first, let's, look at the calendar for the week and then throw in any events, those things we're sure of which day they're gonna go in, make sure that we don't forget about those. And then I do have some reoccurring things in my Notion calendar. So for example, if we look at my Notion calendar, you'll see, okay, so like in the morning, I have what I call like I believe I call it like content creation time. So this is when I'm making things that are promotional materials for my business. Do I always only make things in that time slot? No, but it's like my recommended time slot for myself. I know that I work best for this period of time for creating these things. So on a great day, that's really the ideal time I'll be making things for my business. Anyone running a business knows that promoting yourself is half the battle because you want to keep your pipeline full. So that's definitely something I've been really trying to work on this year, is making sure I have content to go out on all channels that have to do with my business to find new potential customers. So that is kind of like a rough time block that I always have there, but it doesn't mean I have to adhere to it every single time. And then you will see that I leave afternoons empty, but that doesn't mean I'm not doing anything in those afternoons. Really, that's my time for just like work. Work can look very different for me on different days, depending on if I'm building a website project or doing something more graphic design related. So I just know that like that's a flexible time. I don't have to define it. Just know that like work is being done in that period. But then I also schedule things like 12 to 1. That's when I like to read or go for a walk. And I try to make it feel like there's a routine here because it makes me feel a bit more sane with my workday. I need a little bit of that to keep me motivated. And then of course things like the podcast I mentioned, there's certain things every week that I know are commitments that I've made that I have to show up for. So, if you're a student, someone running their business, someone who just has to be a little bit more on top of their schedule without someone checking in with them, I do really recommend just doing some light time blocking. It doesn't have to be super intense. You don't have to have your whole day figured out every single day, but just roughly knowing, okay, like these parts of the day is when I'm going to do these tasks. It can really help you get most of your to-do lists done every single day. Okay, so I know we're going through these things rather fast. Next part we'll be going through is my calendar categories. So for categories, I have my work, personal, podcast, and then I do put most of my YouTube related tasks in red. I love color coding things, so I feel a little bit more sane, like, okay, Green, nice and easy. It's something fun that it's not work related. Blue is generally like work related if it's a meeting, if it's, I don't know, something that has to do with work. It's a period of time I know that's gonna be used for that. Red is for YouTube. So I know like when I'm looking at my calendar, just visually, I'm a very visual person. I can look and see the amount of colors that I'm spending on each thing and be like, okay, that makes sense that I'm spending this much time on work, this much time on content for, you know, YouTube, this much time on perhaps the podcast that I have with a friend. So I really do think color coding is super special. And the great thing about Notion connecting to my Google Calendar is that in my Google Calendar, the podcast calendar is shared with my friend. She throws things in, it's gonna show up on my Google Calendar, which is now connected to Notion. And it's all in there, which really makes me feel a lot better about everything. As I mentioned, Notion does have like features where you can like link projects and timelines and things like that, which I haven't really played around with yet, but I'm super excited to try that out and then update you guys on how that will further improve my organization for the weeks. Okay, in part 5, the final part, nice, short and sweet. How do I access all of this? Well, you know, I have it on my laptop, of course. I showed you all my planning is done on my laptop on a Sunday, but we always have our phones on us. So I love being able to check my Notion on my phone and just be like, okay, like what do we have to get done for the day? I also love pulling up Notion calendar on my phone. It just makes me feel like, okay, everything's here. I have allowed it to give me notifications. So even when I was filming this video right now, I wasn't editing YouTube videos right away or filming anything for YouTube, and it notified me like, okay, we're in the time block now for today where you should be working on YouTube. And so I was like, all right, noted. I will work on that right now, which is why I do love this like rough time blocking schedules in my calendar, because it also will give me a reminder when I should be switching tasks and working on something else instead of just getting lost in the sauce of everything else. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it. I feel a little scatterbrained explaining everything in this video today, but that's why we have Notion. That's why we have Notion calendar, is to feel less scatterbrained. So yes, my, you know, standard operating procedure, my SOP, brain dump, pieces of paper, get everything out of your head onto paper on a Sunday, transition it into your Notion. You can move things around if you didn't finish everything in a week, that's fine. You can just move it to the next week. Keep things on the side if you need to, so that you know that those are coming up. And then, you know, check out your Notion calendar. Time blocking, usually my weeks look fairly the same. Structure is really important and routine for myself, but not so much structure that you feel like, oh my goodness, I didn't finish this thing and now my time block's moving on to the next thing and I can't keep up with everything I've scheduled out. That's the worst feeling ever. I feel like anyone who's tried time blocking probably knows what I'm talking about. So this is like my loosely based time blocking to help bring structure into my life. And it's been working really well so far, and I'm really glad that Notion has that calendar feature now. Yes, it's like, you know, Google Calendar essentially, but just love keeping everything in the same organizational planner for myself. So that's everything I have for you guys today. I really hope you're enjoying your week, and I will see you all in the next video very, very soon. Bye, friends.